This is Radar for On the Radar Entertainment Blog, coming to another show of Movie Reviews and Observations, number 73. So, due to circumstances the previous week, didn't have a chance to watch 7 movies. I only got to watch 6. So the one that I was going to watch was this Korean horror film called 0.0 MHC. And basically, this is a group of people looking for paranormal activity, and they're using radio frequency technology to summon the spirit, and of course, one of them gets possessed and others die and it kills other people, and then you try to see if the person's okay and they're not really okay. And it was very cliche because even though the person that was being hosted, the spirit hosting them, they're the one that somehow survive and other people die, and it's kind of graphic and gory. And then you're watching with subtitles, and it's an hour and 42 minutes. So overall, it was okay. I enjoyed more of the horror film with the zombies and the film crew more than this one from the other foreign film I watched that was a horror film the previous week. Then I watched the movie One Night in Bangkok, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, this movie may be in a foreign language, maybe in Bangkok. But of course, you're like, nah. You're just like, okay. But then you find out that, okay, the guy Mark Dacascos is playing like he's a man from Hawaii, and that he's sort of skill like John Wick or Liam Neeson, and he's getting some sort of revenge. So we've been there, done that before, and he hires his Uber driver to take him to places and kill these people synced up and stuff. But then you got to throw in this detective who's trying to stop him and not understanding why he's doing it, and then this criminal mastermind bad guy who's also involved. And it was interesting enough. A lot of action. It was good role, good job out of Mark Dacascos. Dacascos. And also, when it's only an hour and 45 minutes, it's not a bad amount of time. And you just want to see how is he going to kill everybody on his list to get revenge? What happened to his family? Is he going to survive? Is he not going to survive? That's the interesting. All the connections between each person and what they did to screw over his family. So that is interesting. What I don't understand was every single character in this movie was speaking perfectly good English, no accent, no nothing. So I felt like they hired a bunch of Asian American actors and just pretended they were in Asia, and that they were from the actual country, because there was no dub. It wasn't like there was a dub movie because this dude is speaking in perfect English because he's the main character. Everyone else, the mouths are moving perfectly at the same time, so there wasn't dubbed with somebody else speaking over. So that was one of my things, because like this detective and his wife and some other stuff, they were a little cliche, very silly and dumb, and just didn't make any sense, some of it. But yeah, overall it was really good. Then I watched the horror film Lust, Flower Evil. And again, watching a horror film in Spanish, another language, you're like, okay, cool. And it's also an hour and 40 minutes. But supposedly you got to understand that this is the cult group somewhere in the mountains, and then there's a kid who could be the chosen one, and the cult leader's daughters don't like it, and people are dying and things are happening to that and stuff. In my opinion, this movie was more drama than horror film. It was a lot of talking, a lot of just moving around, boringness, people being upset with people. There wasn't as much like scariness or horror factor to it. I thought it was going to be more scary with the daughters being possessed or something, but it was this kid or whatever. So overall, it was not a good movie. The movie that I really enjoyed was the movie called Three Christ. And the reason why this movie was good is because Richard Gere has been a good actor for a long time. Peter Dinklage, good actor for a long time. Bradley Whitford and Walter Goggins. So it's based off like a book that's also somewhat based off a true story, where they get some of the facts maybe wrong over and stuff. But basically, Richard Gere is a professor of like psychology and like the brains and all this other stuff, and he's trying to figure out schizophrenia and stuff. And there's like he starts to work at an insane clinic, like that sort of thing, and he finds out that 2 patients believe there are Jesus, and he's got to try to get the delusions out of them that they're not. First one was Peter Dinklage and Bradley Whitford, and then he says, let's look for somebody else. And he has 3 of them with Walter Goggins. The whole movie is his unorthodox practices where you don't overdrug and medicate them. You don't electric shock them. You actually talk to them, you care about them, you get them out there, and you actually like do some actual healing and recovery and dealing with mental illness, instead of it just being, we don't know what to do, let's shock them or drug them. And he had like an assistant, and then his wife in the movie was played by Juliana Margolis, and then he had like the guy in charge of the hospital who was like getting in his way, saying that the this person who's above me won't like it. Then he's got a friend who also works, so it's a little confusing. If he's helping him out, then the guy who's in charge of the place has also been in this world, so he was like, yeah, I know more about it, I want to get involved, and he kind of like gets in his way and stuff. But yeah, it was a pretty good movie. I actually really enjoyed it, and I was surprised the library didn't own it because of the big four-name actors in the movie, and it was based off a true story in a book. So you're like, okay. And I did like the other thing is that his last name, the character, was Stein. His parents named it because changed his name during the Holocaust to save him and stuff. Because this movie takes place, in the 1950s and stuff, late 50s. So yeah, overall, this was a great movie. I just don't know why the library bought it, didn't buy it. Then I watched another movie that was really good called The 24th, and I'm like, Andre's in this? Oh my god. I love Andre from Empire. Troy Byers, he's a really, really good actor, and it's good that he got to play a leading role. Then Mo McRae, who was just in the Rebel show as a lawyer, then he was in Pitch as Blip, and then he was also in that Almost Family. He's also playing like a lawyer, and he was in Empire as well, so he's a good character actor. And this Micheletti Williamson being in charge of the soldiers in this movie, he's a good actor. Bashir Saldoun, I've seen him before. I've seen Tassin Muffolda, pronouncing his name wrong, before. And of course, Thomas Hayden Church is the colonel in charge. So basically, it is based off one of these true stories about the biggest riots ever, about the 24th Infantry, that it's all African American, and this is in the early 1900s, so the racism is really rapid in the South and in Texas, and they're there to help, train to go to France and fight in the war, but then they're also in that town dealing with all the racism in the town and the cops and their military police, and they have to deal with the fact that everybody's like treating them like crap. And Troy Byers' character is different because he's a scholar learner from France. He's light skinned, so he's not as dealing with all the stuff, and he's dealing with the sergeant, not liking him, think he doesn't belong, dealing with Mo McRae's character who doesn't like him, and he's got a love story, but realize like it's a story of brotherhood and sacrifice for the movement, for like making African Americans more acceptable in the world, and people understanding that they are men, they are soldiers. Thomas Hayden Church, his character wouldn't get promoted to general because he was, dealing with African Americans and stuff. It was like based on a true story, and it was the largest, like riot between the soldiers and things like that, and deadliest, and then all the court martials and all them being killed and all the other stuff. And it was a very sad movie because if it's a true story, even if I never heard of it, it's sad to see how the movie ends. It's tearjerker, makes you cry. I really enjoyed it. Then I watched the movie Dream Factory, where, okay, I'm thinking again, maybe it's going to be in foreign language, like Luz was in Spanish and 00MH was in, Korean. Nope, it was dubbed, so I was at least saved there because it was like a 2-hour movie. And this grandfather was telling a kid story about something that happened to him in the past, where he's like a soldier, and I don't know if this is war, and this is, like after World War II and the Berlin Wall and stuff like that, so they kind of take some historical relevance there, and he basically works on a set, falls in love with a dancer, backup person, and does everything possible to try to win her over, but then the Berlin Wall happens, separates them, she got to go back to France, and he doesn't know if he'll ever see her again, so he comes up with this concoction of a weird plan in order to bring her back, because she's like the extra for this famous actress. The only way this famous actress is going to come and film a movie is she brings the person she likes to be her extra. But then time has gone by, and he's like, and he's trying to get this plan to go because, he pretended he was like a producer and stuff. So overall, it was like, okay, you got this concoction plan to get this girl back there and fall and have the two of them, actually be in love like they're supposed to. And there were some parts of it that were honky, weird, and crazy. But the thing about it being like weird and crazy and like fantasy-wise, because it is a movie, so it's fake, even with some historical relevance in there, that it was a romance movie, and you can cut corners and make things up and make things unrealistic how this can actually happen. So yeah, it was interesting that it was like the grandfather telling a story to his grandson. I like that. That was a good aspect. And it was 2 hours long exactly with some information on the screen. But yeah, I would say Dream Factory is probably the third best movie I watched. I feel like Three Christ because of the 4 actors based on a true story. The 24th with all these character actors from television, including Thomas Hayden Church from movies, did a great job. And as Troy Byers did an amazing job in this role. Dream Factory was good. I will say One Night in Bangkok was a pretty good movie. There was some odd things going on in the movie that wasn't as good, and obviously it's not a John Wick or, you know, Take It sort of revenge type of film, but overall that was pretty good. I wouldn't waste your time with foreign films, Lust, Followed Evil, or Zero's Point I Made, because you have to deal with subtitles and really bad movies. So thanks for listening to this Movie Reviews Observation number 73 for On the Radar Tay Block. I'm Radar. See you guys next time.